Hello, everybody. This is kind of a follow-up to last week's material, which I've just graded. The discussion post, I wanted to go over this. Most of you did excellent and comprehensive works, in your assessment of the topic. But there are some critical points that I want to make. I want to make clear, right? Just because you write something doesn't mean you're going to get full value because you've made an attempt. Okay. The post asked root causes of poverty, thinking about the role of the individual in society. Some people indicated, work harder. People are not working hard enough. Well, the reality is, if you looked at the data, and you looked at the data, at least in the chapter, but if you looked at the data, income has only increased by about 6% since 1980 overall. And worker productivity, however, a measure of what work generates, has increased by 67%. Okay? So income is clearly not keeping up with work. So when people go, people aren't working hard enough, or they're lazy, or whatever, that's not a thorough explanation of the situation. That's your opinion. And this isn't a class in opinions. This is a class in looking at the data, first in the chapter or in other sources, and then making an assessment there. Also, people who I might generally agree with, workers really have a tough time. They're a lot of people are oppressed. Okay, this isn't news, right? If you write that, okay, in all of these cases, when people write this way, it indicates to me that, what usually happens is then you've not put a reference, an APA formatted reference. And that's, at the beginning of the class, on the home page of the class, it tells you how to do that. If you want to get full writing credit in the future, moving ahead, and many of you are still making this error, you must put a reference at the end in these discussion assignments of your initial post. Okay? The other element that must be in place is that you must respond to at least two of your classmates. Now, I have a wide berth in terms of how you respond. I don't expect a number of words or word count or anything, but I expect you to read and reflect on a couple of different posts in this discussion. Or else what happens then, that's worth 30% of your grade. Southern New Hampshire University you requires that I give you a 0 on this element of the discussion assignments. And that will mean that you're never going to get more than 70 out of 100% in terms of value on your discussion post. Okay. It's not about agreeing or disagreeing, or this isn't a debate, or how you feel, or your opinion. Okay. It said to answer the questions. Okay. Root by thinking about the role in the society and individual, thinking about the root causes of poverty. What's the evidence for that? By thinking, it means go back and read the material. Okay? Read the material. Okay? And then you make an assessment. So, in the flow chart of your work, rather than just reading this, and many of you, I could tell that you just kind of read this and responded. This isn't a class in opinions or writing reaction papers. These are not reaction papers. Okay? You have to write an assessment. There are many people who have really scientifically measured assessments of this very issue who I don't agree with. But, I have to acknowledge that they're partially correct. I'll give you an example, right? Just to make sure that I'm not just being, woke or whatever the terminology is these days. I don't agree whatsoever with Glenn Lowry, who's a conservative psychologist, or Jordan Peterson, but I don't agree with a lot of what they have to say. They have a fundamentally different worldview than me. But in their discussion of income inequality, they were assessing the possibility and the evidence that indicates that intelligence might play a factor in income inequality. That's a pretty radical, idea that's way far away from where I am. But the way they crafted their argument, there is some partial veracity to the argument. I don't agree with it. I think, there's a lot to indicate that neuroplasticity happens in the environment between 0 and 5, and that's when intelligence is fundamentally shaped. And they don't take that, but because they waged their argument in a way that was grounded in, hypothesis testing, I was able to identify the weak parts of their argument and the parts of their argument that may hold some veracity, right, in terms of science. Sociology is a science. In other words, there is empirically testing. It's called a hypothesis test. We do this in when we talk about determining whether the relationship between two variables occurs due to chance or due to something else. So think about this stuff scientifically. You don't have to agree. You don't have to agree with what everybody else is saying or agree with me, but you need to provide at least some evidence for what you say other than your opinion. Your opinion isn't data. Your opinion is how you feel. And that's often shaped by stuff we hear in passing on the TV. We live in these sort of media bubbles. I mean, for example, when I considered watching the information I just cited, that video, I did watch it, but I know that these people have some expertise in some of these areas, right? So, I was able to assess a point of view far removed from mine, but nevertheless, which it's partially true. We're never completely true or false. So when you make statements like, "Oh, people need to pull themselves up by their bootstrap or have the will to succeed," or a statement like, "Oh, people are oppressed," or whatever, that's just vague thinking. That's vague language. Come up with some evidence to suggest. Provide evidence to support your point. Again, I don't have to agree with it, but if you provided the evidence from scientifically peer-reviewed, data, then you're gonna have a rigorous point. So you provide a reference for everything that you write here, discussion posts, milestones, everything, or else you're going to start getting zeros on the writing component, number one. And number two, please, in discussion assignments only, you must respond to your classmates, okay? And please, another final point, different countries, when they say different countries, they're talking about not the United States. They're not talking about immigrants in the United States. They face challenges. They're not talking about other states in the United States. They're talking about another country, right? So when they ask for international comparisons, here's a good rule of thumb. The best way forward with that is compare the U.S. with some other advanced capitalist democracy. Canada, the United Kingdom, South Korea, France. These are all, you can, if you make one kind of comparison with this country, and you're going to be asked to do this throughout these modules, then you're going to be in very good shape. Okay? So as we move forward, I'm looking forward to responding and to your discussions, but please ground your observations first and foremost in a reading of the material. So here's a flow chart for work. Read the material. Read it first. Reread it if you don't understand it. Make notes when you're reading. Okay? Then, okay, read the other material that's there. If there's a lot of these modules, just rather than just going beyond the book chapter, for example, we had to look at a video last week. Okay? So do that. Cite them when you write. Then you're ready to write. When you write, edit your writing, maybe write a draft and then re-edit it. For these initial posts, my favorite thing to do, when I'm writing them in this way, and something is to write it on a Word document, run it through a spell check and so forth there, and then do that. The only other stylistic thing that I would what was a takeaway for me as your course facilitator, and this is from the other assignment that we wrote about bias. Two other things from that second assignment that you had to do and let's look at that. Let's go up here and look at course menu. Let's go down to learning modules. Okay. Okay. So the personal bias. Okay, you had a video and a chapter to read. A lot of people, you need to know the sociological theories. You can't just go, this one is a shiny theory and it works, or write a general statement about sociological theory. Okay, you need to know, what you choose to say, and you need to know what these mean. Okay, first of all, okay, and then basically, when you do that, again, just cite at the end of your writing. And you're going to be, if you have any questions about that, always click on the guidelines and rubric for the assignment. I recommend reading these alongside the material before you get started. If you devote 3 hours a week to this material, and you really should, a minimum of 3 hours a week, you can space it out however you wish, you're going to do fine. But you've got to follow through, and you've got to be thorough on this work. Thanks, and have a great rest of your week.